Before Sydney Sweeney was a big actress with 2 Golden Globes, she starred in a small movie called Voyeurs, also featuring Justice Smith, who played Ash Ketchum in the first live-action Pokemon movie. Why am I bringing this up? Because in today's video, we're going to be invading people's privacy and exploring old Pokemon save files on DS and 3DS cartridges that were received for Christmas by children. We'll start at the beginning. Well, not the beginning, I mean the beginning of the DS Pokemon era. Well, technically Pokemon Dash began the DS Pokemon era, but Diamond and Pearl were the first mainline games. Anyways, here we're introduced to Bee, who played for 44 hours, earned all 8 badges, and hit 137 on the Pokedex. Despite all that time and progress though, it doesn't look like they beat the Elite Four. Bee's adventure began on July 30th, 2007, where they chose Turtwig as their starter, easily the best choice of Gen 4. But for some reason they abandoned it in the PC along with the experience share as soon as it became a Torterra. What the hell, Bee? Everyone knows you have to use your starter until the very end. Ultimately, Bee's team, when they stopped, featured Staraptor, Camerupt, Steelix, Rhydon, and Golduck. That Crana Uno was mine, which I hatched from an egg and gave it a nickname because I'm clever. Otherwise, it was a disappointing showing from Bee with no nicknames to be seen. From what I could gather, she gave up in late 2007 after losing to the Elite Four a couple of times, kept the game in a shoebox for 15 plus years, then sold it. To be honest, I feel kinda dirty looking at these save files. It's like going back in time and seeing someone's past. I'm not sure how Sydney Sweeney and Justice Smith could condone such behavior. Then again, the rush I felt when I spotted her Uxie caught with a Master Ball made it all worth it. Because you only use a Master Ball on something like that if you're impatient or if you don't know any better. You know what, I changed my mind. One nice feature about the older Pokemon games is that you can stalk the previous owners. Darren started playing Pokemon Platinum on March 22nd, 2009, then stopped the next year on August 21st, 2010. Darren ultimately ended his journey in Jubilife with 6 badges, 141 Pokemon on the Pokedex, and 26 hours of playtime. His team comprised of Gyarados, Lucario, Golduck, Leafeon, a level 48 Monferno for some reason, and a Chatot that arrived via link trade from Norton and was used for Fly. Now, normally my Psychopath check is reserved for tech speed, but Darren is on a whole nother level. Monferno evolves into Infernape at level 36. That means he cancelled the evolution 12 times because the held item is Shell Bell, not Everstone. What's even crazier is that he raised a Magikarp and a Gyarados all the way from level 4. So he's a crazy person with patience. Yeah, that shiver going down your spine isn't a haunter licking your toes. As for the proper Psychopath check, at the very least Darren did set tech speed to fast. There wasn't anything interesting in his bag, so let's take a peek in his box. Well, apparently Darren is even worse than I thought, because he had a Crobat, Togetic, Jolteon, Golem, Staraptor, Alakazam, Gengar, and Umbreon, each in the 40s. I checked the original trainers, and aside from Hillary Clinton's Alakazam, Darren caught them all. Not only that, nearly all of them were raised from low levels. I guess we know how we got to 26 hours yet only had 6 badges, beating off a lot of wild Pokemon. Ultimately, what we can gather from Darren's save file is that he was a crazy person who had friends, given that his box includes Trade Evolutioners Golem, Gengar, and Alakazam. The sad part is that Darren never beat Platinum and even revisited after a year. But maybe Darren's a boomer like me and the magic had gone out at that point. Or he was a teenager who discovered Call of Duty on Xbox Live and enjoyed calling people cucks over voice chat while drinking Monster and eating Doritos. Regardless, he abandoned his Pokemon for 15 years until some random YouTuber paid to fondle that part of his childhood with a stylus. Moving to Heart Gold, which we all know is superior to Soul Silver because of the hot turkey, we get to invade Brian's privacy. He ended up playing Heart Gold for 106 hours, getting all 16 badges and hitting 184 Pokemon on the Pokedex. Considering that there's 251 in the entire game, 184 is not very impressive. So let's see if we can find out where his time was spent. Well, the last thing he did was enter the Wireless Club Union Room. I checked his team at the time of picking up Heart Gold for the last time, which is sadder than a mother picking up her child for the last time, and it consisted of Onix, Raichu, Bellsprout, Poliwhirl, Togepi, and Sudowoodo. Except everyone aside from Raichu was acquired via trade. Apparently JJ was Brian's best friend because they did a lot of trading on May 29, 2015. JJ also appeared to be a Simpsons fan, as Bellsprout and Sudowoodo are called Lenny and Carl. Thankfully, Brian's not a psychopath and had the tech speed set to fast. Probably the craziest thing is that Brian began his adventure on March 14, 2010, and it ended 5 years later. Brian's clearly an avid fan because he defeated the Elite Four just 4 days after starting. We can also see that he spent most of his time linking up with other players, battling 4 times and trading a whopping 249 times. The only interesting thing in Brian's bag is that he still had a Master Ball, so let's dig into that box. Unsurprisingly, there's roughly 4 boxes full. The noteworthy part is that they're all spread across multiple generations, not just Kanto and Johto. Naturally, plenty of them are from other trainers, including Rihanna. Considering that she wasn't a billionaire back then, I think this is a way of saying that if you stop playing Pokemon, you'll get rich. Now, before we find out what's in those eggs, let's see Brian's Hall of Fame records. Yeah, I take back what I said about him being normal. He beat the Elite Four 18 times, with his latest coming on November 30th, 2010. The sweeper was a level 92 Dragonite, and there was even a level 35 Vileplume because why not? On April 2nd alone, Brian beat the Elite Four 6 times, which suggests he's not a boomer because at my age I can only do it once a day. 6 would absolutely destroy me. For that first entry, his team was Lantern, Arcanine, Umbreon, Meganium, Ho-Oh, and Dragonair. From what I can gather, Brian played Heart Gold heavily in 2010, then took a break for 5 years in return. Probably to trade with old friends who he no longer keeps in touch with because he has a family now and a full-time job, and every time he looks in the mirror he hates who he's become and wishes he could go back to a time when playing Pokemon sparked that childhood wonder, instead of it feeling like a waste of time and he should be doing something more productive. As for those eggs, I decided to hatch 5 of them. They ended up being Cranidos, Abra, Shelder, Bagon, and another Abra who took forever to come out. Of course, I had to check the most unique thing about Heart Gold and Soul Silver: did Brian beat Red? I loaded up a team of his highest level Pokemon and ventured up Mount Silver. Well, turns out you can rebattle Red by simply beating the Elite Four, so I have no idea if I'm taking Red's virginity or if he's a veteran by now. Regardless, I entered the fight and learned that HP bars moved a lot slower 16 years ago. I also couldn't find Brian's level 92 Dragonite, so I'm assuming he traded it away, meaning Pikachu kinda wrecked me. And I was far too underleveled for Charizard. Red kicked my butt and then took my lunch money. Despite the spanking, this is still one of the coolest battles in Pokemon history. Traveling to the Unova region, I booted up an old copy of Pokemon Black. Well, whether it's coincidence or not, Brian made another appearance. This time around, his team consisted of 4 Pokemon. 3 he caught, plus 1 from someone named Beamar, who did trade over some friends to Heart Gold. Brian's adventure began on March 7th, 2011, and apparently trainers in Black and White have a nature. In addition to amassing nearly $900,000 in those 56 hours, Brian appeared to have obtained every meaningful item and even had 2 Master Balls. But who cares about all that? What's the Pokemon situation? Surprisingly disappointing, actually. That being said, I solved the mystery of Brian's missing Johto and Dragonite, who made a special trip to Unova. There's also a level 100 Garchomp that only knows 3 moves, which I think means he must have had to delete an HM move before transferring it over. I also found a level 70 shiny Salamence from Mills that was caught with a Master Ball. Shifting gears to the record section, Brian took just under a week to beat the game with a team composed of Serperior, Archeops, Gothitelle, Haxorus, Conkeldurr, and Seismitoad. We know Brian has, or at least had, friends, so Conkeldurr being on the team isn't a surprise. Unless I'm an idiot, Brian only beat the game one more time, 2.5 weeks later with the same Pokemon, just a much higher level. And for those wondering, it was a Tortuga that hatched out of the lone remaining egg. Out of curiosity, and because I want to relive old trauma, I traveled to Undella Town. I'm not exactly sure what this told me, but it was winter and I was able to battle Cynthia. Though I find it hard to believe that after nearly 60 hours, Brian never beat her. Still, I tried, and let's just say Full Restore plus a million Double Team and Will-O-Wisp isn't a good combination, as Spiritomb took out both Serperior and Garchomp. As you can probably tell by the move pools, Brian subscribed to the school of all gas, no breaks, meaning there's no status moves or stat boosters. Just attack after attack. And that's always a winning strategy because I won, baby. I went back in and she was missing, so I guess I popped her losing cherry in this game. Oh, and before I move on, Brian must have undergone some sort of villain arc between Heart Gold and Black because he had the tech speed set to mid. That's more terrifying than any battle the game throws at you. We finish up the DS games with Black too. I swear I'm not doing this on purpose, but the copy came from someone named Ryan. Unfortunately, he only played for 4 hours, getting the gym badge from Charon before calling it quits. The adventure began on September 6, 2014, and somehow his team was only Riolu, Pignite, and Flaffy. Ryan never adjusted the tech speed, meaning he potentially suffered a complete mental breakdown as a result of the slow chat boxes, leading to quitting the game after a couple of days. I went and checked the PC, which was empty, so it looks like Ryan never found anybody he wanted to join his team other than Riolu and Mareep, and I find that kinda sad. Our first steps into the third dimension began 12 years ago. What's notable about this copy of Pokemon X is that Lhasa only made it through 7 gyms. After 38 hours. Sure, their Pokedex is at 248, but stopping short of beating the Elite Four was my first hint that Lhasa is a psychopath. The second is the tech speed. Seriously, who plays with it at normal? Since there were no Hall of Fame records to look at, I had to focus on their Pokemon. They used their Master Ball on Xerneas in September 2016, meaning they abandoned the game for several years before selling it. At no point in all those years did they ever find the desire to go back and finish what they started. True psychopath behavior. Elsewhere, they have a level 100 Victini from Game Freak, and their starter Pokemon appears to have been Fennekin, which they acquired on December 26, 2015. That Fennekin did eventually evolve into a Delphox, which was given a Blastoisinite. Yeah, that shiver going down your spine isn't a ghastly licking your ear like it's Joe Biden. Before I enter Lahasa's PC, can I just point out that Talonflame is level 38, was met at level 4, and still knows Peck and Ember? They also never use Super Training, which I can't really blame them for. Anyways, looking through their PC, they have a level 50 French Trevenant from Torgal, plus a level 50 Pidgeot named Penny in all caps that only knows flying moves. We also have a Blastoise named Blastoise, a level 30 Lanoon named Char, and no way. There's a level 47 Pansear called Zoob that was captured at level 4. Who raises a Pansear all the way to level 47? In fairness, it does require a Firestone to evolve, so Lhasa probably kept raising the Pansear thinking an evolution was right around the corner. I know their pain. My ditched level 50 male Salandit is forever stuck in the PC. Out of curiosity, I checked their bag for a Firestone. Ironically, it seems like they had every stone except the Firestone. Can John save us from the evil simply known as Lhasa? Well, the opening screen is a good sign. 8 badges, 667 Pokemon on the Pokédex, there's 721 in the entire game, and a whopping 179 hours of playtime. The first thing I did was take a peek at John's PC. Unlike real life, where people password protect them so you don't snoop around and find the folder labeled taxes, which is randomly 200 gigabytes, I was able to get into it easily and find 2 things. When John first beat the game, and how many times John entered the Hall of Fame. Apparently, the first game clear was on December 28, 2015 with a team of Sharknado, Tyrantrum, Charizard, Pikachu, Sceptile, and Blastoise. But they did not stop there. John beat Omega Ruby's Elite Four a total of 9 times. Win number 2 saw Fennekin on the team, win number 3 was a day later with the same team, they kept the Fennekin for win number 4, switched a few things for number 5, and took several months before win number 6 with the original starter trio and some randos. They then used the level 100 Arceus for win number 7, but for win number 8 got bored and went back to their level 100 trio and randos. Their final victory against the Elite Four came on October 15, 2016, where they added Sliggoo, Wormadam, and Dragalge. I'm not saying they're weird for beating the Elite Four so many times. I'm saying they're weird for doing it with mostly the same Pokemon, all of whom had already reached level 100. Now here's where I got a little more concerned. John is a new type of psychopath. While they had text speed set to fast, which is a refreshingly good sign, they named their boxes and placed Pokemon in them accordingly. They didn't attempt to do that, then give up partway through because it's too much work. John actually did it. Yeah, they've Mega evolved into Mega Psychopath and unlocked the Crazy Eyes ability. Somehow Stantler and Cobalion ended up in the Bug 2 box. I'm guessing they were caught last and sent there by default. And Noibat was alone in the Flying box, as most Flying types were relegated to the normal box. Heading to the Legendary box, there's a lot to look at. While you might think GF stands for Girlfriend, we all know you can't get one of those, so it actually means Game Freak. I imagine John did a decent amount of trading with a friend named Jimmy while also dabbling into the world of Wonder Trading. Registeel, Regice, and Regirock were given the nicknames Steely Dude, Chili Dude, and Rocky Dude, while the Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde have an original trainer called XYZ. John also has a box of starter Pokemon and a box of unknown, but that's not what I care about. There's a mystery box of eggs, so you know what that means. I have the arduous task of biking around like an idiot for 20 minutes until they hatch. While we wait for those eggs, let's take a quick peek at their team before ultimately quitting Omega Ruby. It consisted of the level 100 Charizard, Venusaur, and Blastoise, as well as Gabite, Doublade, and Meloetta. I guess they wanted a Garchomp and Aegislash, but decided 180 hours of playtime was too much and stopped. Alright, time to check on those eggs. I put a Magcargo on my team, withdrew 5 eggs, and got to cycling around in circles for 5 minutes. Just as I was beginning to rethink my life decisions, the first egg hatched into a Weedle. Then came a Meowth and a Venonat. I'm sensing a Kanto theme. There was nothing remarkable about them, so I put them in a PC, got the final 2 eggs, and hatched a Tyrogue. That's Kanto adjacent, I guess. Then there was Heracross. Again, geographically Kanto adjacent. For the final 2 eggs, the first was Barboach and the last was Snorunt. Kind of an anticlimactic finish, which is what my ex-wife used to say to me a lot. Ultimately, it looks like John wanted to complete the Pokédex, but time caught up with them and they gave up astonishingly close to the finish line. Staying in the Hoenn region, Frankie Beans magically tooted out a 36-hour save file with 162 Pokemon on the Pokédex and 8 badges. 36 hours is in the danger zone when it comes to poking around someone's save file. Did they beat it? Did they give up before the Elite Four? Well, Frankie quit literally right after defeating the Elite Four. I booted up the PC, went to the records, and the first game clear was back in August 2011, which is weird since the game came out in 2014, so I'm assuming they had a weird date on their 3DS. Regardless, the team consisted of Blaziken, Machoke, Pikachu, Lanoon, Tropius, and Kyogre. Unsurprisingly, it's their only time beating the Elite Four. Frankie must have grinded super hard to evolve Machoke and Pikachu because they're level 70 and 72 respectively, while the Blaziken named Vez is level 72. Unfortunately, they likely didn't know how to evolve Machoke, that whole needing friends thing and all. As for Pikachu, who knows, maybe they prefer Pikachu over Raichu or Ash is their hero. The Machoke has No Guard and Dynamic Punch, a perfect combo, the Lanoon was their HM slave, Tropius was likely on there for its ability to fly, and the Master Ball Kyogre was probably added last minute since it's the only Pokemon without a held item. Also, Waterfall. Looking at the catch data on Frankie's Pokemon, it appears their adventure began on August 31st, 2016 and ended a week later with Kyogre caught on September 6th. Meaning these Pokemon have been trapped on the cart for 9 years. Digging around in their bag, Frankie's a psycho who doesn't immediately sell their Premier Balls and battle items, or their status heals when full heal is unlocked. But the true psychopath test is the tech speed, and Frankie is deranged. I guess it could be worse. Frankie could have set it to the slowest speed, forcing me to report them to Game Freak for being too much of a freak. Searching through their PC, there isn't too much to write home about. It looks like they gave up on Dustox after catching it at level 6 and realizing it's not very good. They also have a dressed up Pikachu called Pika-Poo that I guess wasn't as cool as their other Pikachu and got locked in a box. Now we say Alola to the Alola region with Pokemon Sun. Unfortunately, DanFX didn't beat the game, giving up after 26 hours. Dan's tech speed was set to normal, meaning we have yet another psychopath roaming around in this world pretending to be like the rest of us. If you thought that was bad, just wait. His team included Magmar, Hairy Mama, a Torracat called Fire, Salandit, Cubone, and Tentacool. Okay, so what's weird about them? For starters, Magmar has a rare candy as a held item. At least the others make sense, kind of. Dan's other Pokemon have Z Crystals, including 2 Firium Z and 2 Phytinium Z. Dan really liked Z Crystals apparently. And what else? Dan caught each Pokemon in the team with a different Pokeball. We're dealing with a whole new breed of crazy person. Digging into Dan's past, the adventure began on December 25th, 2016, so it was another Christmas gift. Dan somehow only has $140 to his name though, and despite playing for 26 hours, only registered 39 Pokemon. And he's only visited Meal Meal Island and Akala Island. My god, I have no words. As afraid as I am, let's take a look at what Dan has in his PC. Okay, Dan only has 2 boxes filled with Pokemon and all of them were caught by him, yet only one has a nickname, this Drifblim named Aquio. I looked it up and apparently it's a currency. Either way, Dan's weird. Especially when you see his pattern of using different balls to catch Pokemon. My only guess is that Dan wanted Pokemon of specific nature on his team, which is why he caught so many things. But none of this explains how he got to 26 hours and only 2 islands. You can almost beat the game in that length of time. I checked his bag and there's 78 Great Balls, 43 Timer Balls, and 41 Heal Balls, so he clearly spent all his money on them. There's also an insane amount of berries in the bag. Maybe there's an innocent explanation for all this. Like Dan shiny hunted a ton and gave them out via Wonder Trade. But the mystery of DanFX would give me many sleepless nights knowing this deranged person is still out there somewhere spending dozens of hours doing Arceus knows what. We've got a crisis on our hands. Get it? Because their name is Crisis? Whatever, this is more like it. Crisis spent 80 hours, got all the things, and has a Pokédex of 158. I'm expecting big things here. First things first though. Yep, unfortunately another normal text speed. Seriously, what is wrong with people? You can increase it to fast instead of holding a button to fast forward through the conversations. They began their journey on November 20, 2016, 2 days after the games were released. And their current team consisted of Primarina, Lurantis, Guzzlord, Ribombee, Marowak, and Talonflame. Pretty good if you ask me. And they even named their Popplio Tidus after the Final Fantasy X character who, fun fact, never has their name mentioned in the game because you can choose to call him whatever you like. A few of them have Z-Crystal held items, and aside from the text speed, I'm not seeing anything to worry about with Crisis. The Lurantis even knows False Swipe for catching purposes. Crisis had over $500,000 dues in their pocket, and they appeared to stop playing after they got the orbs for the Sinnoh legendaries. But then, oh no, 874 Leppa berries. I knew something was wrong with Crisis. Digging a little deeper, they had 309 citrus berries and 403 lum berries too. I don't care if you're the biggest competitive player in the world, you don't have 403 Lumberries. I then headed over to Mount Lanakila to see which team Crisis used to become champion. And like thousands of others before her, Crisis succumbed to the ultimate troll, a male Salandit. She brought it all the way to the Pokemon League at level 61, yet the damn thing can never evolve because of course it can't. The rest of the team was Rabombi, Lunala, Primarina, Wishiwashi, and Marowak. In her PC, she had 7 boxes of Pokemon and a battle team that included Ash's Greninja and a Japanese Incineroar. Elsewhere, there's a couple nickname Pokemon including Free the Butterfree and Choo Choo the Raichu, plus a decent amount of Pokemon acquired via trades as well as a fair collection of Ultra Beasts. But then we come to Box 7, a box filled with Drampa. Either Crisis was trying to get a shiny or they wanted a specific nature. All in all, aside from the tech speed and berries, Crisis seems sane enough. And if you're wondering about those eggs, the first one's a Drampa, same with the second and third. Yeah, it was very boring, and it's like they didn't know some handsome YouTuber would be making a video based on their save file, violating a part of their life they held dear for 80 hours. Okay, I have a bit of a confession. I spent all my YouTube ad revenue this year buying a life-size Lopunny plushie. Also, this save file isn't organic. I bought Ultra Moon right after I decided to make this video, so I asked if there was a save file on it. The seller said they could put every Pokemon in the game. When I asked if they were legit, they dodged the question and instead said they could be traded. Since I'm a huge Smeargle fan, I ignored how sketch that was and bought it. So when you see this insanity, just know that it's not 100% real. The previous owner, Gridolin, ended up playing Ultra Moon quite a bit, clocking in at just under 43 hours. They had every Z Crystal, and of course, the Pokédex is huge, sitting at 403. But who cares about that? Let's see the PC. Thankfully, everything's in Pokédex order, so Box 1 starts with Bulbasaur and Box 29 ends with Zeraora. As you'll notice while I search through the PC, everything's shiny. And a lot of the Pokemon have their hidden ability. And there's regional variants. There's also a couple boxes of event Pokemon because why not? And the Celebi is allegedly from the Game Boy days. At this point, a sickening thought crossed my mind. What happened to the Pokemon that were on the cart previously? The player team consists of an Eevee, a Cubone, and 4 Minior, so I went looking around. In their player profile, they started on November 17, 2017. They ended with $400,000, enough for 1 year of rent in a small apartment where I live. I headed to the Pokemon League and the guy on Mount Lanakila revealed that Gridolin beat the game with Hawlucha, Tyranitar, Salazzle, Raichu, Primarina, and Necrozma. After some poking around, my guess is that whenever the evil Pokemon Hunter installed all these custom Pokemon into the game, they deleted any remnants of what remained so that original team is gone forever. But at least the text speed was set to fast, so it's not all bad. And that'll do it! For those wondering, I did buy copies of Pearl, Y, and Ultra Sun. Unfortunately, the copies I bought were wiped clean like Ash's team against Tobias. Clearly they wanted to hide their deep Darkrai secrets from me. I'm also disappointed that nobody had the battle animations turned off or had the battle style set to set. In conclusion, if you have an old Pokemon game sitting in your attic, maybe dig it out and see what you were like 10 years ago. Just don't check the text speed, because then you might hate your younger self for not knowing something so simple.